Welcome to another episode of Titan PI TV, where we are looking at the inside workings of an operational investigation agency, that being here, Titan in Derby. I'm your host, Simon Henson, and Managing Director of Titan Private Investigation Limited. So today's episode, we are going to cover GPS vehicle trackers versus physical surveillance. A question we get asked time and time again, which one do we go for? So let's look at GPS vehicle trackers first. GPS vehicle trackers are an intelligence tool. They are an aid to surveillance. They gather intelligence. So when they are deployed on their own, and the reason for that may be because we want to get a routine for a subject, we need to intelligently deploy it at a later date, a surveillance team. But if we know nothing about that individual or the vehicle they use, then we can use intelligently a GPS vehicle tracker which we deploy on a 7-day period, which will gather routine. Once we have a routine, it might be then that we move on to physical surveillance. So GPS vehicle trackers, we deploy them. It's £420 for the first week and then £240 for subsequent weeks. The reason week one is more expensive is because we have to build into the costs the deployment and retrieval costs. So GPS vehicle trackers will gain and record location data only. So they can be interrogated after the event, so at the end of each day to see what that vehicle's done, or the end of each week because it records that data, or you can watch it lifetime. But it is only an intelligence tool. You might know that your other half is the only person driving that car, or that your employee only drives that lorry or that sales vehicle. But it isn't evidence, it's intelligence, because there's nothing to actually say evidentially that they are driving it. So GPS vehicle trackers are an intelligence tool, and they are an aid to deploying a surveillance or whilst the surveillance is deployed. Sometimes we get asked the questions, will the tracking device show you who they're with? Does it have a camera? Will it pick up conversations? No, it won't. It is purely a GPS device which records location. So that's trackers. Let's look at physical surveillance. Physical surveillance, we recommend to our prospective clients, is only utilised when you know a specific time frame for something happening. So it could be during the hours of a working day. So it's an employer. It's a corporate client who wants to know what someone is doing during the days of business hours. So obviously we would go straight to surveillance. It might be that it's a cheating partner or matrimonial investigation where the other half of a couple is going out on a Friday night and you want to know what's happening on that Friday night, or there's a works due. So we've got a specific time frame. So we would advise and recommend deploying 2 surveillance operatives. It's got to be a minimum of 2 to perform mobile surveillance. We have covered in previous episodes, we can deploy 1 operative, but that's when we're doing what we call static observations, which is just watching a premise to record everyone in and out, or some sort of feature, and there's no moving away and following a person away from that address. If we do any mobile surveillance, which is moving away with a person, it's got to be a minimum of 2 surveillance operatives. So those operatives will gain irrefutable evidence, both overtly, so that will be using a camcorder in a vehicle, although they aren't using it overtly, it's an overt device, or we could do covert recording. So it might be that a person goes into a cafe, goes into a hotel lobby, goes into any public area. We can then use covert cameras, which are made to look like everyday devices, to gain irrefutable audio and footage of what's happening. So surveillance, 2 operatives, £60 an hour each, minimum of 5 hours. There is no maximum. We will recycle the operatives to work with the European Time Directive, health and safety, etc. There is no maximum, but the minimum is 5 hours. So a minimum surveillance window of 5 hours is £600, including the VAT. We then, within 24 hours of the operation or deployment terminating, provide you with a comprehensive report which includes images taken from the surveillance footage. We can also give you the surveillance footage as well, because an image doesn't give you the irrefutable evidence that video footage can, because it's just a still of what's happening. If we give you the full footage, it just It's irrefutable, absolutely irrefutable. You can't lie. So that is GPS versus surveillance, physical surveillance. It might be that we deploy a GPS tracking device and a surveillance team. And the reason we might do that is because the subject of the inquiry has been under surveillance before and there's been a compromise for whatever reason. Compromises can happen. It might be that emails between a private client and us as regards the instruction have also gone to an iPad, which the subject has access to. So it's compromised. So if they know that you've deployed these tactics before, we might need to be a little bit more clever and have a tracking device so that the surveillance team are a mile or 2 miles behind the subject and close up when something they think is happening to get that irrefutable evidence. It might be that the subject of the inquiry believes you, the client or prospective client, are capable of hiring a private investigator, so their head is on a swivel. It might be that they're involved in criminality, so their head is on a swivel, but they're looking for law enforcement agencies like the police. So in those circumstances, we might need to protect our surveillance operatives by being a little bit more distant, but we've got control of the vehicle through technical devices. It might be that we are following an individual that has instructed surveillance before, so they're aware of capabilities. It's endless. But in a nutshell, GPS vehicle tracking is an intelligence tool. It's a surveillance aid. It gains intelligence and routine so that we can then intelligently potentially deploy a surveillance team. A surveillance team will gather irrefutable evidence, video footage of what's happening. Or it might be we need to deploy them both together for some of the reasons I've just alluded to. So that is another episode of Titan PI TV in the bag, looking at GPS vehicle trackers versus physical surveillance. Please, as always, thumbs up, don't miss us again, so subscribe, and we will see you next time.